The cowboy wanted a virgin bride, but froze when she taught him the first night Elias Mercer had lived on Arca 9 long enough to forget what earth rain smelled like. Out here, the sky was bigger, the dust was redder, and the wind carried the sharp scent of iron and wild alien grass. His ranch sat on the edge of the Kestrel Flats, where low-gravity horses ran like shadows and the horizon shimmered with heat. He was a cowboy, the kind who fixed his own fences, mended his own saddles, and spoke only when words mattered. Folks in Dusthaven said he was steady as old stone. Elias didn't argue with them. Being steady was easier than being hopeful. But on nights when the twin moons rose, one pale and one blue, he would sit on his porch with a tin cup of warm calf and feel the quiet press in around him. Loneliness out here was not loud. It was polite. It waited. So when the Interstellar Settlement Office sent him a message about the Frontier Match program, he read it 3 times before he answered. The program promised partnership, legal support, and cultural guidance. It was meant to help remote colonies grow. Most men in town laughed at it. A few tried it and failed. Elias waited, thinking. Then he signed. He told himself he wanted stability. He told himself he wanted tradition. He told himself he wanted a good bride, someone gentle and simple who would fit into ranch life like a glove. He didn't say the other part out loud. He was tired of losing people. Tired of watching the ones he cared about drift to bigger cities, safer worlds, and brighter futures. The day the shuttle came, Dusthaven gathered at the landing pad like it was a holiday. The pad was a wide circle of packed clay and metal mesh, with wind flags snapping at the edge. Children climbed the fence rails. Old men leaned on walking sticks. The sheriff stood with his hands folded, calm but watchful. Elias stayed a step back, hat low, jaw tight. He had seen ships come and go. This one was small, silver, and clean, like it didn't belong among their worn boots and sun-bleached buildings. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a soft hiss. A woman stepped out. Elias felt his chest tighten, not because she was fragile, but because she was. She was human, but not from any place he recognized. Her skin held a warm tone, like sunlight through amber. Her hair was dark and tied back neatly. She wore a travel coat the color of storm clouds and sturdy boots that had seen real use. Her eyes were steady, curious, alert, and calm. She carried one bag on her shoulder and another in her hand. No escort, no fear. She looked at Dusthaven like a person studying a map, not a person begging for help. A program official in a bright jacket spoke too loudly. Elias Mercer, this is Lyra Vance. Match grade, high compatibility, cultural exchange classification, mutual integration. Lyra stepped forward and held out her hand. Mr. Mercer. Elias stared at her hand for half a second longer than he should have. Then he took it. Her grip was firm, not crushing, just sure. Ma'am, he said. Somebody in the crowd whispered, that's her, like they expected a different kind of woman. Someone else laughed quietly. Elias felt heat rise in his neck. He didn't like being watched. Lyra's eyes flicked toward the whispering, then back to him. She didn't look embarrassed. She looked amused, like she had heard worse. The official smiled like this was all going perfectly. You two have your orientation package. Remember, no major decisions in the first 72 hours, and contact our mediator if you have concerns. Elias nodded once, not trusting his voice. He took her bags and led her toward his truck. His truck was old but strong, with a solar-charged engine and a cracked dashboard screen. Lyra ran her fingers along the worn door handle before climbing in, as if she respected things that survived. They drove out of town, past the water tower, past the last row of houses, and onto the open ranch road where the world spread wide and empty. Kestrel Flats rolled like waves of red grass and stone. In the far distance, a line of dark hills cut into the sky. Lyra watched the landscape in silence for several minutes. Elias cleared his throat. You ever been on a frontier world? Once, Lyra said. Not like this. Dust gets into everything, he warned. I noticed, she smiled slightly. I like it. That wasn't the answer he expected. When they reached the ranch, Elias parked beside the barn. The ranch house was simple, built from local stone and reinforced panels. A wind turbine turned lazily behind it. 2 fenced drones hovered near the corral, blinking green as they scanned the posts. Lyra stepped out and looked around. Her gaze landed on the horses, then the barn, then the wide sky. It's quiet, she said. It can get loud when the storms hit, Elias replied. Lyra nodded like she filed that away for later. Inside, Elias showed her the guest room. The bed was clean, the blankets folded sharp, and a small heater sat near the wall to fight the cold nights. "This room's yours," Elia said. "Bathroom's down the hall, kitchen's there if you need anything." He stopped. He didn't know what came after that sentence. Lyra set her bags down and turned to face him. "Thank you, I have a few questions." "Shoot," he said, then realized the phrase sounded rough in front of a stranger. He added, "Go ahead." Lyra's eyes were direct but not unfriendly. "What do you expect from me?" Elias blinked. Most people didn't ask that so openly. "I expect you to be comfortable," he said carefully. "That's polite," Lyra said, "but not complete." Elias felt like he was being studied the way he studied a sick horse, quietly, trying to understand the problem before touching it. He pulled off his hat and rubbed the brim. "I expect partnership," he said, slower now. "Someone to share the work, share the home, build something." Lyra nodded. "Good, I expect the same." Elias frowned before he could stop himself. "You do," Lyra's mouth twitched. "Mister Mercer, I didn't travel across 3 systems to be decoration." The words hit him like a sudden gust of wind. He wasn't offended. He was surprised and maybe relieved. He had pictured a shy woman who needed him to lead every step, but Lyra didn't seem to need that. She seemed to want something else. He tried to keep his voice steady. "Fair enough." Lyra's gaze softened. "And I expect honesty." Elias swallowed. Honesty was hard. It meant saying things he had kept buried. He glanced toward the hallway, then back to her. "You're not wrong to ask. Folks in town, they got ideas, old ones." "I heard the whisper," Lyra said. "It's fine." "It ain't fine," Elias said before he could stop it. "It's not right." Lyra studied him. "Then don't let them decide who we are." Those words sat heavy in the air, simple but sharp. Elias nodded once. "Supper in an hour," he said, needing something normal to hold on to. "If that works for you." "It does," Lyra said. "And Elias?" He paused at the door. Lyra's expression was calm, but her voice carried quiet strength. "Whatever stories you've told yourself about what tonight should be, don't let them control you." Elias stood still. The way she said tonight made his stomach tighten. He had tried not to think about it, but it was there, waiting like the polite loneliness. Only this time it was expectation, not silence. He forced a short nod and left the room. Out in the yard, Elias walked to the corral, pretending he needed to check the fence drones. The truth was he needed air, he needed space. He had been raised on stories of frontier marriages. A man worked. A woman kept the home. Love grew later like a plant that survived because it had to. And yes, there was that other idea too, the one men talked about in half-jokes and half-serious voices when they thought no one important could hear. Elias didn't like those jokes. He never had. But he had still carried the picture in his mind. A pure bride, quiet and unsure, and him guiding her through the first night like it was another duty to perform. Now he felt foolish. And worse, he felt afraid. Not afraid of Lyra, afraid of being seen too clearly. He spent the next hour cooking, moving around the kitchen like a man repairing a broken engine. Careful, focused, avoiding mistakes. He made stew with protein strips and local root vegetables, the kind of meal that warmed a body after a hard day. Lyra entered while he stirred the pot. She had changed into simpler clothes, work pants and a plain shirt. She looked more like a rancher than a guest already. "You cook," she said. "I eat," Elias replied, then added, "Cooking's part of that." Lyra smiled. Good answer. They ate at the small table near the window. At first they spoke about practical things, water rationing, storm warnings, the herd count, the nearest trade station. Lyra asked smart questions. Elias answered, surprised by how easy it felt to talk when the topic was work. Then Lyra set her spoon down. "Elias," she said gently, "can we talk about the thing neither of us is naming?" Elias froze, stew halfway to his mouth. His heartbeat was loud in his ears. He placed the spoon down slowly. Lyra didn't look embarrassed. She looked steady, kind, even. "I don't want you to panic," she said, "but I also don't want silence. Silence makes fear grow." Elias stared at the tabletop. His hands were big and rough. His knuckles were scarred from years of ranch life. He suddenly felt like a boy pretending to be a man. "I don't know what to do right," he admitted, voice low. Lyra's eyes softened. "Then we do what's right for both of us. We speak, we set rules, we respect them." Elias looked up, confusion on his face. "Rules?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, that's what adults do when something matters." Elias let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. The way she said it made it sound simple, not scary. She continued, calm and clear. "I'm not here to be pressured by tradition or by gossip. I'm also not here to shame you for what you believed before you met me." But I need you to understand something. Elias listened like his life depended on it. Lyra's voice was quiet, but it carried weight. A partner is not a prize. A partner is a person. If we share a home, it has to be built on trust, not on fear, not on ownership. Elias swallowed hard. The word ownership hit him like a slap because he knew some men out here thought that way, even if they didn't say it out loud. I don't want to own anybody, he said, almost rough. I believe you, Lyra replied, but belief is not enough. We have to practice it. Elias' throat tightened. His pride wanted to argue, his better sense didn't. What do you want? He asked finally. Lyra held his gaze. I want time, I want safety, and I want you to be brave enough to learn. Elias blinked. Learn. Lyra's lips curved into the smallest smile. Yes, you wanted a bride who would fit your world, but maybe your world needs to grow, and maybe you do too. Elias sat back, stunned. He felt like the ground under him had shifted, like low gravity had turned to high gravity in 1 second. He had expected the first night to be about him leading, about him proving something. Lyra was asking for something different, respect, patience, and the courage to admit he didn't know everything. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, he said, teach me. Lyra's eyes softened further, warm but steady. First lesson, she said, is that you're not supposed to freeze, you're supposed to breathe. Elias exhaled, shaky at first, then steadier. Outside the window, the twin moons climbed higher, turning the desert silver and blue. The ranch was still quiet. But inside the small kitchen, something had changed. For the first time in years, Elias didn't feel like he was performing a role. He felt like he was meeting someone real. And somehow that was more frightening and more hopeful than anything he had imagined. Morning came slowly over Arca 9. The twin suns rose one after the other, first painting the sky pale gold, then deep orange. Elias woke before dawn, as always. Habit pulled him out of bed long before thought could catch up. For a moment he forgot Lyra was there. Then he heard movement in the kitchen. He sat up, surprised. Most visitors took days to adjust to frontier mornings. Elias pulled on his boots and stepped into the hallway. Lyra stood near the window, watching the light creep across the fields. She held a steaming cup of kaf, her posture relaxed but alert. You wake early, she said without turning. Ranch don't run itself, Elias replied. Lyra nodded. Good, then show me where I start. Elias hesitated. He had expected questions, maybe uncertainty, not readiness. You sure? He asked. Yes. Something in her voice left no space for doubt. Outside, the air was cool. Thin mist rolled over the red grass. The horses lifted their heads as Elias and Lyra approached the corral. One snorted softly, testing the scent of the newcomer. These are low-grav runners, Elias explained. Stronger legs, wider stance. Don't treat them like earth horses. Lyra moved slowly, respecting their space. She watched how Elias approached, how he touched the horse's neck first before reaching for the reins. You don't control them, she said quietly. You negotiate. Elias glanced at her. That what it looks like? That's what it feels like. He didn't answer, but he felt a small spark of approval. He saddled a smaller runner for her, unsure if she had ridden before. Lyra watched every movement carefully. When he finished, she stepped forward and mounted with surprising ease. Elias blinked. You've ridden, he said. Different animals, she replied, but balance is universal. They rode along the fence line. Elias checked drone signals while Lyra observed the land. The horizon stretched endlessly, broken only by distant rock formations and occasional patches of silver-leaf trees that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Your world is harsh, Lyra said. It keeps you honest, Elias answered. She smiled faintly. Halfway through the ride, a sudden alarm chirped from Elias' wrist device. A red warning flashed, perimeter breach. Elias stiffened. Stay behind me, he said automatically. Lyra's eyes narrowed. What is it? Probably a predator drone or wild scavenger. They rode faster toward the eastern fence. When they arrived, Elias saw a damaged section of barrier, wires bent outward. Nearby, a metallic shape moved through the grass. A scavenger bot, old mining tech gone feral. Its sensors flickered erratically as it clawed at the ground, searching for energy sources. Elias dismounted slowly, hand hovering near his pulse rifle. Lyra watched carefully. You plan to destroy it? If it threatens the herd, she nodded once. The machine turned toward them, optics glowing red. Elias raised the rifle, but Lyra stepped forward. Wait, she said calmly. Elias froze, confused. Lyra moved slowly, hands visible. She spoke in a low tone, words unfamiliar to Elias. The scavenger bot's sensors flickered again, its movement slowed. "What are you doing?" Elias whispered. "Listening," she replied. The bot made a soft, grinding sound, then powered down partially, lowering its arm. Elias stared in disbelief. Lyra turned back to him. "It's damaged, not aggressive. It's searching for energy. If you attack, it will respond defensively." Elias lowered his rifle slowly. Together, they disabled the machine safely and dragged it away from the fence. Elias worked quietly, trying to understand what he had just seen. "You knew how to speak to it?" he asked finally. Lyra shrugged lightly. "Machines are like animals, they respond to patterns." Elias felt both impressed and unsettled. He had lived here for years, yet she had solved the problem in minutes. As they rode back, he felt something shifting inside him. He wasn't leading as much as he had expected. Sometimes he was following. Back at the ranch, they repaired the fence together. Lyra handled tools confidently, asking only when necessary. Elias found himself relaxing around her, the silence between them becoming comfortable rather than awkward. Later, they sat under the shade of the barn, drinking water. "You learn fast," Elias said. "I pay attention," Lyra replied. He hesitated before speaking again. "About last night," Lyra looked at him calmly. "I meant what I said," Elias continued. "I'm trying." "I know," she said gently. "Growth is visible when someone tries." Her words warmed him more than he expected. Days passed quickly. Lyra adapted to ranch life with surprising ease. She learned how to guide the herd, how to read weather patterns, and how to fix small mechanical issues. The town began to notice. At the Dusthaven supply store, whispers followed them. "She's not what we thought," one woman said quietly. "No," another replied. "She's better." Elias pretended not to hear, but pride stirred inside him. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned violet, a dust storm rolled toward the ranch. Elias recognized the signs immediately. "Inside," he told Lyra. But before they reached the house, one of the younger horses broke free, panicking. Elias cursed under his breath and moved toward it. Lyra grabbed a rope and ran beside him without hesitation. The wind rose fast, red dust swirling around them. The horse bucked wildly. Elias tried to approach, but the animal reared. "Slow," Lyra said calmly. She lowered her body posture, breathing evenly, mirroring the horse's movement. Gradually, the animal's panic softened. Elias watched, amazed again. Together they secured the horse and guided it back into the barn just as the storm hit. Inside, dust rattled against the walls like heavy rain. Elias leaned against a post, catching his breath. Lyra stood beside him, equally tired but calm. "You didn't freeze this time?" she said softly. Elias laughed weakly. "Guess I'm learning." "Yes," she said. "You are." They stood in comfortable silence, listening to the storm outside. After a while, Elias spoke again. "Back on Earth, people always said cowboys had to be strong alone, didn't need help." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "And do you believe that?" "I used to." "And now?" Elias looked at her, then at the barn, the horses, the life around him. "Now I think maybe strength is knowing when not to stand alone." Lyra's eyes softened with approval. When the storm passed, they stepped outside together. The air smelled fresh, the dust settled into smooth waves across the ground. The twin moons rose again, casting long shadows. Elias felt something different inside him, not the tight pressure of expectation, but a quiet curiosity about what could grow between them. He realized he was no longer thinking about what he thought he wanted before she arrived. Instead, he was wondering who they might become together, and that thought felt bigger than any frontier he had ever crossed. Life on Arca 9 began to feel different for Elias, though the land itself had not changed. The same wide sky stretched above the ranch. The same red dust clung to boots and tools. The same long days demanded patience and strength. But inside him, something was shifting. Lyra moved through ranch life as if she had always belonged there. She learned fast, but more than that, she understood. She watched before acting, listened before speaking, and when she worked with purpose. Elias noticed how the horses trusted her. Even the stubborn one seemed calmer when she approached. The fence drones responded to her adjustments better than his usual settings. And when she spoke to townspeople, she didn't try to impress them. She simply met them where they stood. One morning, as they repaired a water pump near the northern ridge, Elias found himself watching her more than the work. "You're staring," Lyra said without looking up. Elias blinked. "Wasn't." "You were," she replied calmly, tightening a bolt. "It's fine." He felt heat rise to his face but said nothing. After a moment, he cleared his throat. "You make it look easy." "It isn't easy," she said. "It's just new. New things require focus." Elias nodded slowly. The town's attitude toward Lyra had begun to change. At first, people had watched her with curiosity. Some had judged quietly. Others had waited for her to fail, but she didn't fail. During a supply run into Dusthaven, the store owner greeted her with a friendly nod instead of cautious distance. "You fixing Mercer's ranch better than he ever did," the old man joked. Elias snorted. "Don't encourage her." Lyra smiled faintly but didn't deny it. Later, as they walked past the saloon, a group of settlers paused their conversation to watch them pass. Elias felt the old tension return, the weight of expectations pressing against him. He had always been comfortable alone. Being watched as part of a pair felt different. "Does it bother you?" Lyra asked quietly as they loaded supplies into the truck. "What?" "The attention." Elias hesitated. "I'm used to folks knowing my business, but this feels different." "Because now it includes me," she said gently. Elias nodded. Lyra leaned against the truck. "Then we face it together." The words were simple, but they settled something inside him. That evening they rode out to check the outer grazing area. The land there was rougher, with sharp rock formations and deep shadows where alien plants grew thick and twisted. As they rode, Lyra asked questions about his past. Not many, just enough to understand. Elias spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. He told her about growing up on Earth, about losing family early, about coming to Arca 9 to start fresh. "I thought the frontier would make things simple," he admitted. "And did it?" she asked. "For a while. And now?" Elias thought for a long moment. "Now it feels more complicated, but in a good way." Lyra nodded. They reached a hill overlooking the ranchlands. The view stretched endlessly, the grass moving like waves under the wind. Lyra dismounted and stood at the edge, watching the horizon. "In my culture," she said after a while, "there is a ritual for partners." Elias raised an eyebrow. "A wedding?" "Not exactly. It happens before that. It is a test of trust." He leaned against the saddle horn. "What kind of test?" She turned toward him, expression calm but serious. "Both people must reveal something they fear losing, not objects, not status, something deeper." Elias shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not good at talking about feelings," he admitted. "I know," Lyra said kindly. "That is why it matters." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Lyra spoke first. "I fear losing independence. On my world, partnership is sacred, but many misunderstand it. They think joining lives means surrendering identity. I will not become smaller to fit someone else." Elias listened carefully. He respected the honesty. "And you?" she asked gently. Elias stared out at the land, searching for words. The wind moved through the grass, carrying distant sounds of the herd. "I fear failing," he said finally. "Not being enough. Losing someone because I didn't understand them." Lyra studied him quietly. "That is not weakness," she said. "Feels like it." "It is courage," she corrected. They stood there for a long time, letting the conversation settle. Later, as they rode back, a call came through Elias' communicator. The sheriff's voice sounded tense. "Mercer, we got trouble. Corporate convoy moving toward the flats. Mining claim dispute." Elias' jaw tightened. Corporate miners rarely respected ranch boundaries. "They got permits?" he asked. "Questionable ones," the sheriff replied. "Town meeting tomorrow." After the call ended, Elias looked at Lyra. "Things might get messy." Lyra's eyes sharpened. "Then we prepare." The next day, Dusthaven gathered in the meeting hall. Settlers filled the room, voices rising with worry. A representative from the mining company stood at the front, smiling too politely. "Our expansion will benefit everyone," the man said. "Jobs, resources, infrastructure." Elias crossed his arms, unconvinced. Lyra watched silently at first. Then, when the representative mentioned relocation of certain ranches, she stepped forward. "Your proposal lacks respect for existing agreements," she said calmly. The room fell quiet. The representative looked surprised. "And you are?" "A resident of this community," she replied. Her voice was steady, confident, and impossible to ignore. She pointed out flaws in their plan, referencing legal details and environmental risks. Elias felt pride swell inside him. After the meeting, several settlers approached Lyra with gratitude. "You spoke better than any of us," one woman said. Lyra shook her head. "I only said what was necessary." Outside, Elias stopped beside her. "You handled that like a pro," she smiled slightly. "Sometimes strength is simply clarity." As they walked back toward the ranch, Elias realized something important. He wasn't guiding her anymore. They were walking side by side. That night, sitting by the fire, Elias felt a strange mix of peace and nervous energy. The future felt uncertain with the mining threat looming, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone facing it. Lyra looked at him across the flames. "You're thinking deeply again?" "Yeah." "About what?" He hesitated, then answered honestly. "About how different things turned out from what I expected." "And is that bad?" Elias shook his head slowly. "No, it's better." Lyra's eyes softened. Above them, the stars of Arca 9 shone brighter than ever, scattered across the dark sky like distant promises. Elias realized that the frontier was not only a place. It was a journey between two people learning how to walk together. And though challenges were coming, he felt ready to face them, not as the cowboy he used to be, but as someone becoming something new. The morning after the town meeting felt heavier than usual. Elias woke before sunrise, but instead of calm routine, tension followed him like a shadow. The mining company had not come to talk. They had come to take. Everyone in Dusthaven understood that now. Outside, the ranch lay quiet under soft blue light from the smaller sun. Fence drones floated slowly along their patrol paths, and the herd grazed peacefully, unaware of human worries. Lyra stood near the barn, checking a small data tablet. "You didn't sleep much," she said without looking up. Elias shrugged. "Enough." She studied him carefully. "You carry the problem like it belongs only to you." "It's my land," he replied. "It's also our home," she corrected gently. The word "are" settled deeply in his chest. They spent the morning reinforcing fences and checking equipment. The sheriff had warned that corporate scouts were already moving through nearby sectors, marking routes and scanning resources. Around midday, a long shadow appeared on the horizon. A convoy. 3 large crawler vehicles rolled slowly across the flats, kicking up red dust behind them. Their metal frames shone under the sunlight, too clean and too confident for frontier life. Elias felt anger rise. "They're early," he muttered. Lyra watched quietly. "Or they assume resistance will be weak." Elias tightened his jaw. "They don't know this town." The convoy stopped near the outer boundary marker. A drone lifted into the air, scanning. Elias grabbed his hat and walked forward. Lyra followed beside him without hesitation. When they reached the boundary, a man stepped out from the lead vehicle. He wore polished boots that had never touched real dirt and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Mercer," the man said smoothly. "I am Director Haver. We are here to begin preliminary operations." "You're on private land," Elias replied calmly. "Temporary overlap," Haver said. "Our permits are under review." "That means you wait." Haver's smile thinned. "Progress does not wait." Lyra stepped forward slightly. "Progress without respect is conflict." Haver glanced at her, surprised. "And you are?" "Someone who reads contracts carefully," she answered. Elias felt a quiet pride. The director sighed dramatically. "We wish to avoid trouble, however our schedules are strict." Elias crossed his arms. "Then adjust them." The tension in the air grew heavy. Finally, Haver nodded once. "We will return tomorrow with legal confirmation." He turned away, signaling the convoy to retreat a short distance. As the machines moved back, Elias released a slow breath. "They'll push harder," he said. "Yes," Lyra agreed, "but now they know you will not bend easily." That evening, Dusthaven gathered again. Settlers spoke loudly, some angry, some afraid. The mining company promised jobs and development, but many knew it would destroy the ranch lands. Elias listened, unsure what to say. Then Lyra stood. Her voice was calm but carried across the room. She spoke about unity, about negotiation instead of fear, about using both tradition and strategy. "We are stronger together," she said. "Not through force, but through clarity and cooperation." The room grew quiet. Even the sheriff nodded slowly. After the meeting, several settlers approached Elias. "You chose well," one man said, glancing at Lyra with respect. Elias felt warmth rise in his chest. Later that night, Elias and Lyra sat outside the ranch house, watching the twin moons climb into the sky. "You lead differently than I expected," Elias said. Lyra tilted her head. "Is that a problem?" "No," he replied softly. "It's good." Silence settled between them, comfortable and warm. "I used to think strength meant doing everything alone," Elias admitted. "But now I see something else." Lyra waited patiently. "Strength can mean trusting someone enough to stand beside them," he finished. She smiled faintly. The next day, the convoy returned, but this time the town was ready. Settlers gathered at the boundary, standing shoulder to shoulder. Ranchers, mechanics, families, all united. Haver stepped forward again, clearly annoyed. "This is unnecessary," he said. Elias stepped forward calmly, Lyra beside him. "Maybe," Elias said, "but we're here anyway." Lyra handed over a data file to the sheriff, who passed it to Haver. Inside were legal challenges, environmental reports, and settlement rights that made mining far more complicated than expected. Haver's confident smile faded. "This will delay operations," he admitted. "That's the idea," Elias said simply. The director studied the crowd, realizing resistance would not be easy. Finally, he nodded stiffly. "We will reconsider our approach." The convoy turned away slowly, disappearing into the red horizon. A cheer rose from the settlers. Elias exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. Lyra stood quietly beside him, watching the dust settle. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she corrected gently. Days passed, and life slowly returned to normal. The threat remained, but the community had found its voice. One evening, Elias and Lyra rode out to the hill where they had spoken about fear before. The sky burned orange and purple as the sun set. Elias dismounted and stood beside her. "I've been thinking," he said. Lyra waited. "When you arrived, I thought I knew what I wanted," he continued. "A simple story, a clear role, someone who fit into my world." He looked at her. "But you didn't fit, you changed it." Lyra's eyes softened. "And I'm glad," he added quietly. She stepped closer. "Partnership is not about fitting," she said. "It is about growing." Elias nodded slowly. He felt no pressure now, no expectations from old stories, only a quiet certainty. The cowboy who once believed he needed control had learned something deeper. He didn't need to lead alone. He needed to walk beside someone who challenged him, strengthened him, and saw him clearly. The wind moved across the plains, carrying the scent of home. As the twin moons rose, Elias realized the frontier was no longer a lonely place. It was shared. And for the first time in years, he felt not just steady but truly alive.